Okay, this next approach is the unschooling approach. And this is where it can get a little hairy. So sometimes when you're asking questions, you have to be sure you understand what another homeschooler is talking about, because not all new homeschoolers take the time to read and try to understand the different approaches. So sometimes they use terms interchangeably. And so sometimes they'll say relaxed homeschooler, sometimes they'll say child-led. Those terms can also mean part of an unschooling type of lifestyle. Now, unschooling back in the day really got a bad rap, and it's really not fair because unschooling is an approach that works well too. Let me explain what it is, because sometimes a lot of new homeschoolers feel a little uncomfortable with it. Even a lot of seasoned veterans feel uncomfortable with it. But remember, you don't have to take an all or nothing approach to these approaches. You can say, you know what, I like the facets of all of these. I'm just eclectic. I like this facet, and I like this. Just remember which facets you like about it, so you're not trying to combine all of them, because you could easily overwhelm a child. Okay, so unschooling approach is child-led. That's where the child's interest, or your children's interest, determines the subjects, not the other way around. You don't determine the subjects, then the child falls into line with learning those. So his interest will guide what the learning is for the day. Now, as you can probably understand, or maybe not, let me explain this to you. There's not unschooling curriculum. Unschoolers use everything at their fingertips. Back when I was talking about deschooling, remember I told you there's a lot of overlapping concepts here. And that is, they'll use everything at their fingertips, everyday life experiences to learn. Museums, field trips, guidebooks, groups, activities, the library, operas, any field trip they can take. All of those are part. Planting a garden, cabinet making, all of those are part of what interests a child. So the schedule is very loose, and the way it looks is the mom asks the children, what do you want to learn today? Then based on that, they passionately pursue what their interests are. And the idea is, from pursuing these different passions or topics, the child is exposed to what he needs to know for life. And some homeschoolers who are more focused on life skills, which are very important, more than the curriculum, will choose part of a homeschooling approach. And it's true, we have a lot of kids that graduate that don't know how to change a tire. You still need to know how to balance a bank account, or at least be able to check it, write a check out. Yeah, sometimes we still do need to write a check out these days. They don't know how to menu, plan, budget, cook, wash, just basic skills to survive, and how to open a bank account, how to apply for a loan. A lot of emphasis is put on real life application with unschoolers. Okay, so it's child-led. They have a loose schedule, and a lot of them are more hands-on with what they're doing. Hands-on activities would be part of it. So for example, they would have reference books available. They would go to the library to get what they needed. Now, I've had a lot of unschooler friends through the many years I've homeschooled, and some of them don't have any problem getting a workbook or a set of curriculums their child's interested in, because that's the thing, they can kind of choose a la carte, and then others stay strictly away from curriculum. They'll say, we'll just use a reference book. If my child needs to know how to write, we're going to get this guidebook that teaches them the basic steps to how to write a paragraph or an essay. Okay, so you can see it's very loose. Not a lot of homeschoolers feel comfortable with it, because sometimes we think we want to be told what to do. But that very thing sometimes turns you off the longer you homeschool, because you're teaching your kids, you see their strengths and their weaknesses, and you don't really need to always be told what to do. You just need a basic guideline or framework. Now, obviously, if you're in a state that has stricter state laws, it's a little harder to do this. You're going to have to meet those state requirements. It doesn't mean you can't unschool, but perhaps you could have this set of curriculum, which is what some of my friends did. They had this set of curriculum that they used just to meet those laws, do exactly what they need to do, and then the rest of the time they filled in with their unschooling ways, which they really enjoyed. Okay, so it's more taking the child's talents and capabilities. It's more life experiences. Okay, the other consideration about this, though, this is what you need to look at, because like I said, we pick up each approach and we look at it from all angles. Here's what I want you to know about. It's harder to keep records. It's hard to know if the child progresses. What they learned this year versus last year. Sometimes we want a benchmark. Sometimes we want a standard, a guide. Are they making progress? Not everyone feels comfortable with this because there's not a way that we can say, hey, they made progress. Unless we test them, of course, or what we think we need to test them, but not really, because there's a lot of ways a child can demonstrate mastery that's not test involved. They could have a demonstration. They could tell back to others in public what they've learned. They could tutor a younger child. There's a lot of ways that unschooling moms say, I can see if my child knows this because he's demonstrating it this way. And that's really is what, a student becomes a teacher if they can tout back what they've learned. Okay, so that's kind of their philosophy. All right, it's not easy to keep up with educational milestones. And then here's the other biggie that a lot of homeschoolers will start talking about, and that is, it's not up to my child to dictate what he needs to learn. It's my job as the parent to guide him. How about if he never gets interested in a particular subject? That's a possibility. He might not ever want to do math. So what do we do about that? You see? So then unschoolers will say, well, we introduce it in a way that's meaningful. Sure, we absolutely do that, whether it's grocery shopping, everyday life. It makes something valuable to them. For example, I was teaching one of my sons math that wasn't interested in learning about perimeters. Okay, well, how can I make this meaningful to him? Well, I told him if he didn't figure out what a perimeter was or how to calculate it, there was no way he could make money while he was mowing yards. Oh my goodness. All of a sudden we see a purpose for it. He had to get down and calculate and be sure that he was making the money he was supposed to be making when he went to mow yards. He had to make sure the perimeter of the yard and calculate it right. See, that's the point. All of a sudden learning has meaning, but really that should be the way it is with all approaches. Learning really should have meaning, but even more so in the homeschooling approach. Okay, so those are the facets of it. You see that some of the considerations of it. You can see some of the advantages of it, and there's no really homeschool curriculum. You start, you basically take a list and you say, what do you want to learn about? And that's your guide for the year. Some moms do it weekly, some moms do it daily, some do it by the month, so they compare a few resources. Science becomes the garden, and in math and everyday life experiences, whatever they're interested in, whether ballet, opera, history, they study it. They follow the child's lead in what he wants to learn. Okay? All right. So sometimes that's called relaxed. Sometimes it's in there. Sometimes relaxed also can mean some of the other approaches, but with the relaxed, sometimes with the relaxed approach. Sometimes they'll say relaxed for unschooling. Sometimes they'll just say child-led, but some of the other approaches can be child-led too. You can see where it gets a little confusing because you can even have the traditional approach and it says, we're a little bit more child-led, but I'm using a box curriculum. That means she's tweaking it and deleting lessons that they don't like, but using the box curriculum as a framework. All right? But mostly it's a loose schedule following the child's talents and capabilities and interests.